Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests with us. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. We know her as our clinical, our organizational, and our forensically trained psychologist. She is also the president and co-founder of AMA and Associates Incorporated, the president and founder of Celeste Productions Incorporated. She is also an author, editor, musician, and she is the 2023 recipient of the President's Distinction Award from the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation. She is the first Black chair elect of the Michigan Health Council Trustee Board in its 82-year history, trailblazer. And she created a column for the Michigan Women's Forum, Phenomenal Michigan Women, and the name of the column is Stars, Scholars Teaming to Alleviate Racism in Society. Dr. Angie, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Can I make just a slight correction
Yes,
there?
please,
Just a
please,
slight,
please.
no problem. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. The Stars Alleviating Racism was I contributed to the anthology. I did a
Oh,
chapter
to
on
the
that.
anthology.
Yes,
Gotcha.
the anthology. And the Phenomenal Michigan Woman was the name of the column I created for Michigan Women's Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the way that came about real quickly was the editor, she reached out to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're doing amazing things. Can I interview you?" Which was so kind. So we did a great interview. And I had such a wonderful rapport with her. I pitched it to her, and
Mm-hmm.
I had this idea. I said, how would you feel if I created a column? And the reason I created the column is because she was covering wonderful, amazing women doing amazing things all across Michigan. And where were the Black folks? I wasn't seeing the women, my women of color. So
That's
I called it Phenomenal Michigan Woman based on Maya Angelou's famous Phenomenal
wonderful.
Michigan
And
Woman.
that is one of my favorite pieces from Maya Angelou. And that's why you're here tonight
Happy to
because
be here.
thank you. We're going to talk about whitewashing of American history and fear mongering. Whew. All right, Dr. Angie, let's get right to it. So, we have our government has taken over the Smithsonian and is now going through, I know, very scary, is
Mhm.
now going through trying to determine if there are aspects of those exhibits which go against the government's current agenda, which basically is celebrating America and sanitizing slavery, especially Black history and slavery. Why are Americans so afraid of history? And why do you think that the government, and I'm not going to say that they started at this point, but why do you think maybe this is where we are?
Um, as is usually the case with your amazing questions, there's like multi-layers,
Yes.
multi-layers. Okay, so there's why are Americans
Yes.
afraid? And
Yes.
then there's why is the government, because the answer is not always the same. There's some similarities, I would say, and some differences. So let's start with the government. The government. Um, the government, there's the government in general in terms of the machine that has been built and maintained over, are we coming up on our 250th
We
uh,
are.
birthday as a country, as the United States of America?
Mhm.
Um, uh, it's been maintained based on our Constitution, of course, and
Mhm.
the amendments to the Constitution, the updates and things like that over the years. But the basic ideas around the Constitution that help us to be and maintain a republic and a democracy.
Correct.
So the basic premise, of course, with our Constitution is supposed to be that it is a country governed by the people.
Mhm.
Um, And I think they have said that the famous quote from Ben Franklin, I think it was Ben Franklin, after all the work of hammering out the Constitution and all of that, and the days and the weeks, et cetera, and the back and the forth. And I believe it was Ben Franklin, correct me if I'm wrong, who said after all of that, okay, this is your republic if you can keep it, like if you can maintain it. And the
Mhm.
reason for the if is, and the thing that makes our country so unique is the ideals and the ideas in our Constitution that is governed by the people, that it's made in a way where no one power has all the power, where it's not, it's purposely designed where we have branches that are not just branches, but co-equal branches. Our judicial branch, those are our judges, right? All the way up to the Supreme Court, all the way down to traffic court, whatever the case may be. We have our executive branch, who that's the presidency and that the cabinet and all that. And then we have the legislative branch, and that is those are our representatives, our Congress people, our senators, who deal with the passing laws and the legalities and all that kind of stuff. So um, those three branches and the way things are designed in this country, again, it's supposed to be to keep no, which is great grammar. I'm a university professor. To keep no one particular person or branch from becoming king-like, right?
Mhm.
Because we fought the Revolutionary War to get away from King George and the rule and all that stuff. I reference Ben Franklin, if that is, or at least that quote, if that came from him, because the idea is what he was saying was, these are wonderful ideas, but knowing human nature, it's
Right.
not always easy to maintain these things because, as Shirley Chisholm said about power, ceding, nothing and all that, and there's always the temptation to
Mhm.
try to pull more power than what was intended in our country. And that's a human thing. It's not invented by this particular administration that we have at this time. But if a person does not have checks and balances on one's own morality, if a person does not live by a certain code of ethics in their lives across the board, if a person does not have people within their circle who can help them maintain balance, and or if a person, maybe even if they have those people around them, but they don't have the moral fiber, as people as people have said, then that slippery slope and that temptation to try to grab power can become very quickly and easily all consuming.
Mhm.
So we know that one of the traditions in our country has been from the citizenry to not always trust their government. Excuse me, pardon me, to not always trust their government. There have been some legitimate reasons for that, absolutely. But then also, as with anything, we've always had representatives who worked really hard and really, really cared about the people and really pushed for legislation and laws and protections for our people. And then we've also always had some people who were in it for the money and the power. Human nature. Um, but the checks and the balances and the fact that the people can choose their leaders has helped, for the most part, even some of that out so that we still maintain a democracy where people have the power and it's not all concentrated in one area. So having said all that little history lesson right there, the government at this time is led, in terms of the executive branch, that's the presidency, by someone who we will speak, let us stay safe, play it safe, and just speak in terms of what has been public facing. Donald Trump has been in the public domain all his life.
Mhm.
Um, he's been interviewed, he's been in the real estate business, all the rest, right?
Mhm.
Long before he became the reality TV character. I did say character.
You did.
And and then before he came down the golden escalator the first time for his first run at the presidency. So he's been around a long time. And there's been documented evidence that shows that his moral fiber, and his respect of women, people of color, black folks, etc., has shown that it's not always the strongest.
Mhm.
Let's just say that. And so this is why, at least in our country and other countries too, this is why when we have people running for public office, we don't just look at their professional conduct. we do take into account how they have dealt in their private lives as well. They don't have to be perfect, but if you have people who are serially, constantly cheating on their spouses and constantly, have domestic violence charges against them and all these other kinds of things, it can speak to the kind of person and therefore the kind of leader that they would be. So the person we have at the head of the executive branch of our government right now has many things on his record that show that perhaps he might be more inclined to lean toward reaching for all the power rather than respecting the idea that the power belongs to the people. So
Mhm.
because I would say that reason and all of those in the party that supports him most in terms of our representatives are why um what was your original question?
I said, why is the government trying to whitewash our history, especially Black history and slavery? And
Yes.
why are Americans so afraid of history?
Right. So the purpose of whitewashing is a way to maintain that power,
Yes.
to
Yes.
maintain it and to try to get more of it and to strip as many other people, other meaning citizens, others meaning people who are not fellow wealthy people, other meaning working class folks, even middle, even upper class people who are not at the highest 1%. The whole whitewashing is to try and maintain the pretense and
Mhm.
the lie
Mhm.
that white folks founded this country, white folks built this country, white folks financed this country, it's white folks' brilliance that kept it. And if we want to continue to go forward in the best way possible as a country, we need to maintain whiteness.
Yes.
So, so that has, even though we're seeing it in stark contrast, I mean, we're seeing it in stark ways at
Mhm.
this time.
Mhm.
We know it's not new. We know that academicians like myself and others, down through the decades,
Mhm.
have fought to have more of the truth of of the full history of our country
Mhm.
um, in those books in terms of what women have contributed and what Black people have contributed and Black women inventors and Black men, all of that stuff, and people who are brown, people who are Latin, all of that. Have not traditionally been in our history books, have not been talked about in terms of contributions in our psychology classes. When I teach, I'm about to teach another psych course this fall at Wayne County Community College District. And
Mhm.
I always incorporate information and, you know, teaching them about a fuller picture of the contributors to the field of psychology. So that
Mhm.
whitewashing is not new. And it's always been important for those in our history, white folks predominantly, really, to try to maintain power. You got to pretend because you have to pretend because if you don't pretend that white people did everything positive to get us to help make our country successful,
Mhm.
then then you run the risk of two things. One, the people who are not white and wealthy, but white in particular, you run the risk of them waking up and recognizing and realizing how much they perhaps that they didn't contribute as much as they thought. Doesn't mean they didn't contribute things. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean that, but there's a whole lot of our success as a country that came from the work of non-white people. This
Mhm.
period, and that
Mhm.
includes intellectual property as well as physical work and gifts and talents and all that. So that's really key. And then the other thing is if you don't whitewash it and you tell the truth instead, then you run the risk of people seeing you and your people as more flawed than the fantasy puts forth.
Mm.
More flawed. That you are actually capable of some very horrible, horrible things. People are capable of horrible things. It's not just, white folks or anything. But we've been using the word whitewash, and so I just wanted to just take two steps
Mhm.
back, just for those who may not know what that means.
Mhm.
I assume we're defining
Yes.
whitewashing as
Yes.
attempting to erase
Mhm.
any information from the public sphere. That means in our books, in our encyclopedias, in our history, it's history books, all of that, um, that does not hold up white people. That's what we call whitewash. That pretends that white people are the saviors of everything, and that we have very, very, very little input and key important information and contributions from non-white people. So that's whitewashing, and that's this
Mhm.
administration is working really hard to do. So for the government's perspective, to maintain power and to get more power and to try to convince as many people around these governmental leaders that they should have that power. So that's the government's perspective, I would say. And then for the people, why are Americans afraid of it? We've heard some people talk about it. That whole thing about, well, I don't want my son or my daughter to hate herself or himself if they learn about the horrible, barbaric, disgusting, low, and just horrific things that their ancestors did.
Mhm.
Um, and so for some people, they're afraid, terrified that their child will have, self-hate. Um, for other people, and these sometimes these cross as well. They're associated. Other people are concerned that they will lose their culture because a lot of that identity is built around a lie
Mhm.
that John Wayne and people who look like John Wayne were the original quintessential cowboys, when there were all these amazing black cowboys who established many of the practices that I just use the cowboy as the example, but
Mhm.
that's true in science, education, arts, sport, across the board. Across the board. So there's identity issues, there's self-esteem issues, there's a lot of fear as well. People have sometimes expressed some fear, white folks have,
Mhm.
that if the truth is out there among more Americans, then um, uh, then more Black Americans and Latin and Chinese and other Asian, etc., will recognize and realize who they are in terms of their power and their contributions to this
Mhm.
country. And then there's the risk that they will, quote unquote, rise up and try to do to white folks what white folks have done to them. So there all of those different kinds of fears, and also there's the in terms of identity, the risk of losing white privilege.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So all of those things are why a lot of times white folks, not Americans, can
Yes,
be afraid of it.
American.
And since you did say Americans, for non-white Americans,
Mhm.
um, sometimes people of color, black folks and Latin folks and Indian folks, and from India, and indigenous people in this country, both black and what was called a different tribal folks.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's painful for them.
Mhm.
They don't want to hear about the true American history, the full American history. Um, it can be re-victimizing for some people.
Mhm.
It can be re-traumatizing for some people,
Mhm.
depending on how they were raised, if they're first or second generation or whatever, regardless of the generation. Um, Sometimes people have expressed embarrassment to
Mhm.
say that their family had gone through what they had gone through. So, multi-layered psychological and emotional and traumatic issues can be there on all sides for
Mhm.
why Americans sometimes don't want to know their history. But may I just throw this at you?
Please, please.
What I'm loving, and I'm sure you've probably seen this too, it uh, oftentimes there's an unusual boomerang or backlash or an unusual reaction
Mhm.
to what some folks do when they think they're victimizing people, but in reality, what they're doing is creating a new and more empowered coalition to push against that. So,
Mhm.
what I'm loving is the amount of history,
Mhm.
particularly Black history,
Yes.
that is being shared all across these social media platforms, TikToks and Instagrams and Facebook, where
Mhm.
people from all different backgrounds are sharing stuff that we know has not traditionally been in our textbooks, even though although that's changing, it's getting a little bit better. But
Mhm.
I submit that while we have people who research this and share, we have had that all along.
Mhm.
To me, it appears that once this administration tried to say that there was no more Black History Month, and of course, The citizenry ignored that completely, of course.
Sure did.
Com completely. But have you not noticed, as I have, as I'm sure other people have as well, who are fellow Americans, and even non-Americans who are looking in from other countries,
Mhm, mhm.
people, it's like it exploded even more. People were sharing and sharing on top of sharing and digging up information. So I'm loving the reaction from the American citizens, particularly in terms of our history,
Mhm.
that folks are educating each other like crazy about all kinds of intellectual inventions, all kinds of stuff we didn't know about. And I'm seeing Chinese Americans, I'm seeing other Asian folks talk about uh the issues of bias against Black people in, in
Mm.
their cultures and in other cultures as well, and educating each other and telling their fellow folks from their own, fellow ethnic and cultural backgrounds, how much privilege they have because of Black people,
Mhm, mhm.
because of the civil rights movement, because the rights that they have because of us. I'm loving seeing that. And there's a whole slew of we, to pause for a moment, yes, we know we don't all fit into black and white, but it's,
Right.
unfortunately, that is a remnant of our colonial our colonialism. We know there's a difference between Lithuania and Polish people, and all true. And there's diversity within Black folks too. But having said that, there's a
Mm.
whole slew of white influencers.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, oh my, just everywhere.
And
Just
I'm learning stuff that I didn't know either.
exact yes,
Mhm, mhm,
exactly. They
mhm.
talking to their fellow white folks, and we're learning stuff as well. So I to me, it really speaks to the resiliency of the American spirit that still remains and will not be so easily tamped down. And I'm absolutely loving that.
Yes, I agree with you. There are quite a few white, social media influencers who come on and share history, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Ah,
Yeah.
I read that. I didn't even know. Wow." And so then, these are people that you begin to follow, and they're sharing things, and they're very, very passionate about it.
Very much so.
So it's interesting that you mentioned cowboys because Bass Reeves is a historic figure who is considered one of the very first black cowboys in the United States of America. And a lot of the things that we attribute to John Wayne and Wyatt
Mhm.
Earp and all these different characters, they said a lot of that came from Bass Reeves. And I'm
Yeah.
like, interesting.
Yeah. I
Uh,
just learned that recently as well. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. And furthermore, you had brought up about how white people are so afraid, or at least this is sort of the notion that people say, that other minorities who've been abused and brutalized will
Mhm.
rise up and do the same thing. I don't normally quote this person, and I can't really quote this because I don't remember the exact quote, but Minister Farrakhan said, some of y'all, meaning white people who are
Mhm.
racist, he said, you all are looking at us through the lens of your own guilty conscience. He said, you are so worried about black people doing what you did to them. And I always tell people this all the time, every time somebody's upset. Well, there's just so much violence. I said, I don't have anybody in my family that went to jail. There's nobody doing anything illegal. Most of us have an education or a trade or something and are living honest, everyday, ordinary lives. And so when you take that fear, it's almost as if racist people are looking at you from their own guilty conscience lens.
Mhm.
Because truly, and a good friend of mine and yours says this all the time, if black people did to white people what they've done to us, oh, buddy, we could have burned this country down years ago. But we
Mhm.
haven't. We haven't. We
Very
elected
true.
our first black president who tried to unite the country. He didn't come
Yeah.
in and say, I'm going to be the president for all black people. And I know black people across America get mad. I'm like, he could never be the president of Black America. There is more than just Black America. He
That's
had to
right.
be president for everyone in the United States. It would never work. Just like
That's
if you got a Latino Hispanic who became president. He couldn't, that person, he or she, could
Mhm.
not be the president for the Latino Hispanic nation of America. No, it's not going to happen. He or
Exactly.
she, and I keep saying he, forgive me, he or she,
Yes.
hopefully we'll get to the woman president. We're working on it. Um, but that person would have to unite the entire country, and they
Absolutely.
would have to be president for everyone.
Mhm.
And so I just want to keep that in the back of our mind. But Dr. Angie, from a psychological perspective, I'm sure that it's a dangerous practice or or project to change the narrative about how we think about ourselves, about what truth looks like. And thank you for giving a definition for whitewashing. But I would even go a step further and say minimizing, not just erasing, but minimizing, because there's a series of videos that have come across social media where they're being targeted towards kids, specifically the PBS age kids, so like Sesame Street age, where
Mhm.
children are being told, well, slavery wasn't that bad. It was it better to be enslaved or killed? And I'm thinking, why is this even a conversation?
Absolutely.
You brutalized people. You stole people from a country. And I've been to Ghana. I've been to Ghana. I've been inside the slave jails. They exist. I stood in one where they close the door and you hear the metal clang, and all of a sudden the air is thick because there are no windows. There is nothing but blackness. There's no light. There was a group of about maybe 40 of us, and there were people who started to hyperventilate because you
Mhm.
couldn't breathe because all of a sudden the air became thick. There is a scent, there is an energy that
Mhm.
is in these slave castles. I've
Mhm.
been to Elmina. I've been to Cape Coast Castle. I've seen them. The brutality where you're chaining a woman because she doesn't want to sleep with you because
Mhm.
you are raping her. This
Mhm.
isn't some consensual love story that we love to put on television and say, oh, black and white people can love each other. Yes, they can. Virginia versus Loving. This is not that.
Right. That's
This
correct.
is this is a master slave. This is someone who is taking control of someone and taking away their bodily control and saying, you have to do what I tell you to do.
Mhm.
One of the slave castles, and I think it was Cape Coast, the gentleman showed us there was a line that went around the cell. It was dark. He said, I want you to imagine feces, urine, semen, menses blood, women having babies, all of that is in this room. So
Mhm.
when we talk about civility, when we talk about this white entitlement, this white excellence, where, and someone used this word and I thought it was funny, so I'm gonna use it too, where we're pedestalizing whiteness.
Oh,
They came up with,
pedestalizing. Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
I don't even know if that's a real word. Is it? If it's a real word, I'm using it now. Thank you, Dr. Ian.
I've heard people using it, so I think it's been
Okay.
introduced into the lexicon.
I think it has. So we'll have to see if Webster's dictionary accepts it. So, and I'm looking and I'm like, these people were living in feces,
Absolutely.
urine. They were treated like animals, where
Mhm.
you are literally sitting in waste. And you as a ill-mannered rapist, psychopath,
Mhm.
murderer, greedy, I don't know what the word is. You and every slave castle had a church on top. Roman Catholic Church was the Catholic Church was on top of every castle. Everyone that I went to, there was a Catholic Church, and they could look down and see. And so it was interesting because we could see the door where the women would have to go up to to the quarters where the highest ranking person was. And he
Mhm.
would literally get his pick. He looked down, I want that one. So you are dragging this woman who one doesn't speak your language, is
Mhm.
probably a child because they were stealing everybody. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they weren't raping, it wasn't equal opportunity. I'm sure it was. But many of these were young women.
Mhm.
And you bring this woman up, you clean her up for the sole purpose of having sex with her. You offer her some food because that's what the historian told us. Said, "Here, here's a little bit so you can have some energy, so you can do what I need you to do,
Mhm.
not for you." This was never about Christianity.
Mhm.
Christianity, matter of fact, was already in Africa. We can go back to Old Testament and go back to the
Ethiopians.
Ethiopian. Thank you. We
Yeah,
can go back.
absolutely.
But I digress. We come
It's not
here.
a, that's not a digression. It's all in it.
It
It's
is all in it.
all in
It's
this.
all in it.
It's
But
all
we
in it.
but we come here and we make it seem like slavery wasn't that bad. And the astonishing thing about my trip to Ghana, and it was an amazing, and I encourage anyone who's interested in African history, Black American history, and slavery to go visit the slave castles. Go talk to historians, read the
Uh,
books that are there.
Yeah, I was just going to add, and if you're
Mhm.
interested in American history,
Mhm.
that's American history.
It is.
This
It
is this
absolutely
is
is.
this is what our country was built on.
So I went in 2024, and the historian said we just started learning about slavery. And we all looked at him, all us Americans, Black Americans, and we said, "How is that possible?"
Mhm.
And he said, "We didn't know what happened to you. We knew you were taken. All we thought is that y'all worked on farms." I said, "No." I said, "Many of us were raped,
Wow.
brutalized, sold, lynched, killed, burnt, all kinds of stories." And I said, traumatized to the point where many of us are struggling with high blood pressure,
Mhm.
diabetes, heart disease, which are all things that can be passed down.
Yeah,
They
generational.
scientifically has said that Black people have, I forget what it's called, and you may know this, Dr. Angie.
The generational
Yeah,
trauma. Is that-
yeah. Well, no, not generation, but a higher uh uh relation to these particular diseases because it's passed through our
Oh,
DNA.
higher
And
susceptibility to them. If I
yes,
did, yes.
yes.
Hmm.
And so when you look at it, and when we were listening to them, and we told them, we said, this was not, something that was okay. And they said, we understand that it wasn't okay. They said, we just didn't know. They said, we're learning now. And now we're sharing it with our students.
Wow.
But here, the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to go to my question. The insidious thing about the slave castles, water is everywhere.
Hmm.
Your Cape Coast Castle is literally on the coast. Elmina is on the coast. And there's water everywhere. But where the slaves entered the ships, it was darkness. They kept the slaves disoriented.
Hmm.
And one of the historians told me, and I still I don't struggle with it, but it gave me a whole new dimension to
Hmm.
slavery. He said the Europeans came here. He said they didn't take the Africans off right away. They built ships in the ocean. They used bars of gold to measure against our bodies to see how many people they could take. This was intentional. So when people say, "Oh, no, 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 slavery wasn't that bad." Oh, yes, it was. It was
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, it was worse.
It was worse. When you lynch people and you cut off body parts and pieces of skin and ears and pass it out as trophies at a picnic.
Hmm.
I just learned maybe 20 years ago that picnic was a horrible word. And the reason why it was called picnic. And so, most folks I know, we try not to use that word.
Hmm.
It just means, can I say it? It means
Pick
pick
a inward.
inward. Yes.
Pick an inward.
Yes,
Mhm.
that would be someone that would be taken, they would be lynched, and people would literally have a cookout where they would gather around where this person is literally on fire
After church
after church on a
with their
Sunday
kids, with their
with their
little
kids.
kids,
Yep,
and the
yep,
person swinging their dead
yep.
body is hanging from the tree branch. They're sitting under with their food.
Yes, enjoying a great afternoon because this was entertainment.
Mhm.
You have Alligator Alcatraz in Florida right now, where they are deporting or holding migrants before they deport them or whatever they're going to do. In American history, in this country, these United States of America, and
Mhm.
understand two things can be true at the same time. The United States of America is the greatest country in the world. However, it brutalized black people because it used black children as gator bait, meaning you kidnap a child or took a child or however you did it, chained the child to the water and waited for the alligator to come and eat the child so you could capture an alligator or a crocodile.
Mhm.
That's truth.
Yeah.
We are in 2025. Black truckers are disappearing across this country.
Black truckers are?
Black truckers. You had your first one in North Carolina. It was a young man. He was in his early 20s from Chicago. He was driving a truck. He went to Walmart. The police sheriff or somebody was questioning him why he was there. He was like, I'm just here at Walmart. The next thing you know, he disappeared. There have been several. There's another man someplace in the South where he disappeared. All they have found is his phone and his keys in his truck, and his truck was on the side of the road. They are now lynching people again. You just had a white man shoot a black veteran in the middle of the street with people around because he was in a wheelchair and the white man believed that he was a threat. This is a black veteran who served in the military in a wheelchair. He had some kind of gun or something on his side, and the white guy thought he was a bad guy. So he shot him.
Did the white guy get any?
He got arrested. He got
Okay.
arrested. I don't know what else has happened, but this is Ahmaud Arbery. Oh, you can't,
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't be in my neighborhood. This is
Mhm.
Trayvon Martin going to
Mhm.
get Skittles and a drink, and I'm
He
just
tried
walking.
not to hurt that guy.
He tried not to hurt
Tried
him.
not to. He didn't want to hurt that guy.
And we teach our children to not be violent, to not antagonize white people, to listen to authority, to listen to the
Mhm.
police, even though they say terrible things to you and try to get a rise out of it. We do all of these things in these great United States of America. But we know every day when we wake up, we are black. Going back to my original question, Dr. Angie, because I just gave you a whole lot. Psychologically,
Yes.
when we change the narrative or the truth of ourselves,
Mhm.
what does that say about us as a people? And how does that harm us mentally? Or does it harm us mentally? I don't know.
It definitely harms us mentally. I just want to go back for just two steps just to say,
Mhm.
because people do say what you the last thing you said, that we wake up knowing that we're black. How I love waking up being black.
Amen.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
And if you're not black, whatever, however God made you, that's beautiful too.
That's
I
right.
love being reminded that I'm black. It's
Hmm.
beautiful. It's
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
we're everything.
We
That
are.
we are everything. Um, yeah, it's very harmful. Examples of the damage that having a false idea of oneself and one's history can do, like some of the evidence of some of that. Uh, Taking it completely away from the whole racial conversation, even political conversation. Let's just talk about like individuals who
Hmm.
are suffering from the psychological term as that has made it into the mainstream, body dysmorphia.
Hmm.
So, body dysmorphia, for anyone who may not be familiar, you can look it up. It's basically this idea that when you look in the mirror, what you see, what you physically see with your eyes, your brain interprets not based on what you're seeing, but based on your emotional trauma or your own issues around what you believe or have been told you should look like.
Hmm.
Or, and so we can see that in extreme examples. All examples of body dysmorphia don't have to be quite this extreme, but extreme examples would be like a person who is anorexic and
Hmm.
they're skin and bones. They've lost so much weight, starving themselves, trying to reach
Yes.
some kind of ideal. But when they look in the mirror, they see someone who's overweight. That's body dysmorphia. That's the damage that can happen when we are messing around with the true, it's not funny, with this whole idea of not dealing with the truth of who you are. They A lot of times people with anorexia, they are trying to deal with it. They're struggling with that. But that struggle has to do with a disconnect
Hmm.
psychologically and mentally and emotionally between, and the struggle is between again, identity. Who am I really? What do I really look like? And what is my mind telling me? And then
Mhm.
that disconnect creates a term, another term, psychological term, that cognitive dissonance that we've talked about before,
Mhm.
where um, within oneself there is a clash between how I define myself, or what I think of as my identity, and then what I'm really seeing, or how I'm actually behaving. That can create a lot of stress, high blood pressure, stress, psychological and physiological damage, that can really just really wreak havoc, to the point where it can actually end lives. That's how extreme it can be. So that's one example of a person by person, individual basis, where um, really it's not whitewashing, but not dealing with the reality of what is in front of you in a not a, I don't want to say a conscious way, but in a way that deals with your concrete day to day. I use the word reality, kind of
Yeah.
reality that you're living. So if you broaden that out to the damage that can be done on a larger scope with the citizens of our country, the damage that can be done when we're not dealing with the truth, and we're whitewashing and we're pretending and all this kind of stuff, it does harm in several ways. One way is, we've kind of talked about this in the past as well, where let's take people who have tend to have to be given, no, I can't say that, tend to have stolen the privilege, all those things that you named,
Mhm.
lynching to get the privilege, murdering to get the privilege, lying to get the privilege, all that kind of stuff. So the people in our country, who would be the majority, well, we're no longer majority, are they? Who used to be the majority in our country, which are quote unquote white folks. We know that
Mhm.
we're a majority brown country now.
Mhm.
But all that has been done to prop up the false idea that they deserve the privilege is based on lies about identity. So the damage that that does for a lot of white folks is that they have the identity is based on a false premise of superiority that doesn't exist. And
Exactly.
so if as an individual you're superior in certain things, and you have great intellect or great gifts and whatever, that's wonderful,
Mhm.
great. You have some concrete things that you can point to that shore that up, and you can have evidence of that. As a people, white people in this country, since the superiority and the privilege upon which, I'm sorry, the privilege upon which the supposed superiority is based, because the superiority doesn't exist as a people. um,
Mhm.
what begins to happen is, again, that cognitive dissonance comes into play when something threatens the idea of white people as superior.
Mhm. Mhm.
And oftentimes, if a person really buys into that consciously or unconsciously or both, then when Kim Davis walks in with her brown fabulousness,
Folks are
it can cause certain white people who buy into this not lie, it's not true, that they are automatically superior just because of their whiteness. It begins to create that discomfort within within that person. They question their own identity. They get angry. They target anger at Kim because you're making me uncomfortable. Well, why is she making you uncomfortable? Because she's so articulate and brilliant and accomplished.
and I've never met a Black person who can speak so well. We hear that all the time.
That kind of, yes, that kind of nonsense.
Yes.
As if white people, because of their whiteness, are automatically articulate well, which is not true.
No,
So that
it's not.
there's a whole mountain of lies built up based on things that are not true, to try to teach white people, that's passed down, generations within white families, the communities, and it's in our laws and all the whitewash history and everything. And it's damaging because, like I said, when people get uncomfortable, the fact that you're uncomfortable means that you're not really dealing with who you really are.
Mhm.
And we know that you don't have to be a psychologist to know that when people are building their existence upon lies and things that don't really exist, other problems can happen. First of all, there can be psychological and mental breaks from reality.
Mhm.
It can become more difficult to handle certain challenges because you are not grounded in who you really are. Instead, you're grounded in who you aren't because it's based on lies.
Mhm.
And the more extreme versions is when you see people who become violent. We have a lot that's documented, a lot more than needs to be documented about the amount of violence white people individually and as groups have perpetrated against Black people, as you've already talked about.
Mhm.
Entirely, to the point of people losing their lives and everything else, entirely based upon feeling threatened because I was told that I'm supposed to be superior. And
Mhm.
so it really messes with the psychology, the mentality, and all of that. And people can act out in horribly sociopathic ways that damage others, damages themselves, and lives can be lost. And if lives aren't lost, still lives can be very much damaged by that. Um, so that's those are just parts of the damage.
Mhm.
Um, Other things like our country as a whole, we say this about everyone, every person, regardless of their background, that it's important to see what you can be or get an idea that our children need to see people modeling behavior or doing things to let them know that they can do anything, that certain careers and all kinds of aspirations are actually possible. So the damage of whitewashing and pretending like we haven't had Black inventors and Black scientists and Black astronauts and
All
Latin,
things.
all
Mhm.
those things. Um, it again, it falsely can convince our brown and Black children that they were never meant to be great, because all of our children are great, and that's all of children of all different backgrounds. And one of the last things I'll say about that, the evidence of the damage that can be done when we whitewash and we pretend our history isn't what it is. um, I was just rereading again the famous couple, um, the Clarks,
Mhm.
who, because I'm going to include that in my class that's coming up.
Okay.
But Mamie Clark and her husband, whose work in social science, particularly her work in social science and the Dow test that she did,
Mhm.
helped to pass the desegregation laws, the Supreme Court desegregation laws. Um, because her Dow test, for those who don't know or don't remember, um, it was work that she did where she had a Black doll and a white doll, and asked a series of questions of Black little children to choose which doll do you prefer, which doll is the smart doll, which doll is the good doll, which doll is the pretty doll. And consistently, Black children being raised at that time was through the 40s, the 50s, and all those decades, consistently chose dolls that didn't look like them. The
Mhm.
white doll is the good one. The white doll is the one that God loves. The white doll. So that left the Black doll as undesirable. And when the next questions that were asked in these experiments of the Black children were, well, does the Black child look like you? What they reported out was, when they asked those questions, the Black kids started to get visibly upset,
Wow.
because it was the trauma, was they just needed to disconnect. They didn't want to go near that idea, because
Mm.
then that means that I'm bad because the
Mm.
Black doll is bad. That research was so important, and it was not only did it help pass the Supreme Court law, to desegregate, but also it just, and chiefly, it really showed the psychological and emotional damage that it does to perpetuate these lies about our American history that say that Black and brown people are not only valuable, but not visible, not brilliant, not all of those things that we are and always have been. So, as we know, kids are sponges, and if we have any questions, we can see it through our children's response and reaction. So very,
Mm.
very damaging on all sides. And then finally, the damage, of course, is if you don't know your history, you're doomed to go back to it. I would submit that the way that this administration is handling itself, it does not view going back as doomed. It views
No, it
going
doesn't.
back as, this is what we want. Yes.
Right.
And so it's easier to drag people back. So some think, we're not saying it really is true, if they don't know these truths.
Mhm.
But we're not, as they say, we're not going back.
Nope,
And we
not
have
at all.
children teaching children now. We
Mhm.
have folks of all different backgrounds, white folks teaching the true history
Mhm.
of our contributions and stuff. So yeah. Oh, I want to add this one other thing.
Yes, please.
The word of the day, if you all are not familiar, is confabulation. The word of the day is
Confabulation, and what does
confabulation. Let's say it. Confabulation. Confabulation is a word that we use. It is in our diagnostic code as psychologists and psychiatrists, etc. And basically, what it means is to misremember.
Mhm.
It's not quite the same as out and out lying. You're remembering things that were not true. It's true.
Mhm.
And some people can kind of, there are degrees of confabulation, but that whole idea is that you misremember it, like you don't remember it quite accurately the way it is, and then the more that is done, speaking in terms of your question in our conversation today, the more that's done and introduced into conversation and public discourse and history books and all that, and the more things are erased, and we misremember that we ever had a black amazing president and all, and et cetera. Um, it's sort of, it's a way of trying to inject again that whole idea of lies and retelling of things as they were not,
Mhm.
so that after a while, I would never say it becomes the truth, but it becomes the way generations begin to remember it. And even before we deal with generations, just folks who live through it,
Right.
it's a way of influencing people to say, well, maybe I didn't quite remember it that way, try to make it fuzzy. But thank goodness we have people who are fighting against confabulation
Absolutely.
and not not let not letting that happen. I just have to say that
Mhm.
you may have seen it. There's this video going around with Barbara Walters, the great
Yes,
journalist.
with
Have you seen
Donald
it?
Trump. Yes.
Yes. And of
Yes.
course, my favorite part, 'cause she was an old-fashioned journalist and she would push against if he said things that were documented, not true. And
Mhm.
my favorite part of that was she would say, "No, it's not."
Right.
She's like,
She
"People are
said, "I've
saying."
talked
She
to
said,
them."
"No, it's not. No, they're not.
Yep, I've talked to them. You don't have any money.
You don't have any money." That is, and that's what people are doing from the grassroots level, of Americans all the way up to some of our leaders at the top who are pushing against these lies and trying to whitewash and the damage it does and all of that by saying, no, that's not true. This is what really happened. So we
Mhm.
we need to keep doing that on all the levels.
Absolutely. Dr. Angie, that is a great way to end our podcast. Before we get out of here, tell us how we can reach you and how we can find you and follow you on social media.
Thank you. Thank you for
And
having
what you
me.
have coming up too.
Okay. Well, let's see. I'll just start with what I have coming up a little bit, and then I'll end with how you can find me. What do I have coming up? At your wonderful invitation, I am going to be speaking at the University of Detroit Mercy. One of the two people who will be sharing information with the Black law students, and that takes place in October at the McNichols campus of University of Detroit Mercy, and I'll be talking about the impact of psychology and what Black people and Black law students will be dealing with. So I'm looking forward to that in October. As I said, I teach at Wayne County Community College District in their psychology curriculum. So I've taught there since 2011, and I will be teaching a class this fall, this fall coming up,
Summer
starting
is coming to
September.
an end.
Exactly, exactly. Still doing music, of course. I continue to teach private voice and piano at the Mary Grove Conservancy, my studio at Mary Grove Conservancy in Detroit. Um, and so and in my own music, um, the violin divas have begun to practice again. So we've begun to rehearse. So we'll be performing coming up. And we put a pause for a moment with the music project that I was doing when we were traveling and all that wonderful stuff. But I continue to sing, and so I don't have anything coming up in the near zone, but we're working on some stuff.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. I am a member of the Society Incorporated, which is a national organization. We support young people in the arts, and so I'll talk more about that later. But we are working on a showcase, a semi-annual showcase for people, young people, that we're going to be putting on in the spring. We're working on that. Um, I am also a member, executive board member of the Metro Detroit Association of Black Psychologists. And we have a symposium that is coming up on October 18th. And that will take place at University of Detroit Mercy. We're going to be at that wonderful campus. We are looking for sponsors. It is free to the public. And it's a symposium having to do with mental health concerns and solutions for the Black community. And so we are inviting not just fellow professionals in mental health, but people from all the community are welcome. It is free. So you can you can find me on Facebook at Angela Celeste May. And if you go to my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page, which is Angela Celeste May, you will see my wallpaper. You see my profile picture, and then the wallpaper has the flyer and the information for that symposium. So we're excited about that. You can find me in addition to that Facebook page. There's Angela Celeste May, and then there's Dr. Angela Celeste May, which is my Facebook page for music. My company with my sister Michelle and May, AMA and Associates. You can reach out to us and find out the things that we're doing at amaassociates.com. We do counseling, consulting, and coaching. And so we can learn more about that. And what else? We are, my sister and I are both on Instagram and on Facebook, AMA Associates. AMA Associates. And you can find me personally on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, where I predominantly talk about music stuff and genres of music and vocal quick tips and all that. So there is also my book, which is Freedom. There it is. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? And you can find that at Ex Libris, where the publisher's website, and you can also get it at barnesandnoble.com. So I think that's, oh, and one other thing, you can reach out to me at either Dr. Angela at amaassociates.com if you are interested in executive coaching with
Mhm,
me.
mhm.
Or you can reach out at Celeste, which is Celeste, like on the screen. Celeste, and then M as in music, US, and the number one at AOL.com if you are interested in bookings for music, teaching, etc. And that's what I got going at the moment. A few things.
Wonderful, Dr. Angie. We love having you on the show, and we can't wait until next month when you have another exciting topic for us to
Thank
discuss.
you.
So
Thank
thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for tuning into the Kim B. Davis Show. You know me as your host, Kim B. Davis. You can find me or find this show at youtube.com/ Kimberly Bachelor Davis. You can listen to this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. You can find me everywhere on social media, Kimberly Bachelor Davis. I'm on Snapchat, TikTok, Blue Sky, Spill, Fanbase, Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, LinkedIn, and a few other places that I probably forgetting. You can also learn more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. And I'm adding something new. I want you all to remember that your voice is important. You're important. The things that you believe in, the things that you value. You matter. Your voices matter. Your voices are important. And always remember, be magnificent. I look forward to seeing you all on our next episode. As always, remember, be magnificent.